Well, hi, everybody. I'm Cassia Gray. And for this winter fellowship, I was working at Long Beach, where I did this project Cultivating AI and Data Privacy Transparency. And I was working within the Technology and Innovation Department. And I'll get into that a little bit more. So here's Long Beach. Long Beach is a big city in California. We are serving 400,050 residents and 16,000 plus employees. And within Long Beach, there is the Technology and Innovation Department, which is like managing digital services across the city. And then the Technology Planning and Partnerships Division, which leads the Smart City Initiative. And they are using emerging technology that addresses like civic challenges within the city of Long Beach. And then within that division, there's the Data Privacy Office and the AI Office. And I worked with both of them under TPP. So a little bit about TPP. Long Beach's Smart City Initiative has made them really like a recognized leader in digital governance, as they've been named the top digital city for the past 5 years. And in the past couple of years, they've been recognizing the important opportunity to bring efficiency to government and improve service delivery through exploring emerging technology, mitigating its risks with governance, so different policies and guidances, and engaging in thoughtful community education to create a technological literacy with their residents and staff. So currently, all this important work is kind of buried in the site. This is the Smart Cities website. It has all the work that TPP is doing. But because it's buried, it's pretty challenging to find. And on top of that, it's pretty outdated. So this website was made 6 years ago, and they've just been adding and accumulating information as these initiatives have grown and changed. And then additionally, it's not ADA compliant. So ADA compliance is the website accessibility, and they have to meet compliance by April. So another thing that I had to start thinking about is how to do that. So from a user perspective, they conducted a survey with both staff and with the community to understand feelings around AI and kind of like data privacy. And basically found that like despite the fact that the important work is being done within these offices, they're doing this incredible job of getting these policies passed. Like people just don't know that it's happening. So only 61% of residents feel like they don't know anything. 59% of staff kind of know, and they're concerned. AI and data privacy are really sensitive subjects because they feel really uncertain, personal, uncontrollable. It's like this whole black box situation. And we see that with 46% of residents feeling concerned. And when these things come together, there becomes an information and trust gap where people are not sure whether or not they can trust the city to be transparent and accountable in their practices. So my role was to come in as a design fellow to research and design an AI data privacy webpage for the Smart Cities website to improve transparency around the initiatives and help bridge that gap, while also providing recommendations for a website redesign. So I was an SME, so I was independently leading and running this entire process. And so I was really leaning on existing best practices. I took a little bit of inspiration from the 18F methods and process and built out this design, kind of like schedule with a lot of different ways to get to my final point. Starting with the discovery phase, I want to just familiarize myself, chatting with like internal stakeholders, the people who are doing this work, and understanding their priorities and goals and communicating what they need on the website. So I was going through, reviewing 40 plus resources, all sorts of things from surveys to slides to videos and documentation and legal documents. And then I wanted to understand, like, who am I communicating this all to? And so we're targeting really residents, city employees, and vendors who are involved in like the procurement process and creating tech for the city. And that brought me to the question, how might we design web pages to increase understanding of the city's AI and data privacy initiatives and help close the information and trust gap between the city and its audiences? So then I moved into the design step where I was creating the frameworks that would support the design process. I started just kind of like looking at how everyone else is doing this. Okay, how are local government offices and public institutions communicating, seeing what works, what doesn't, and getting inspiration on how to move forward with like content and design patterns. So looking at language, visuals, hierarchy, interactivity, and text, and those usages. From there, I went into user journey mapping, where I took a look at like the different like different people and then how they would move through AI and data privacy web pages to ground the designs and the experience of who'd be using it. So, like, if I was a resident, what am I thinking and feeling as I land on the search page versus the home page and moving through the web page? From there, I kind of established like the key design principles, which are understandable, which means like designing content that anybody can digest through using plain language and clear structure, transparent, presenting all the information and guiding people to it. Without it feeling super overwhelming, and then like relevance, which is supporting people's curiosity by providing the right information when they need it. Not like, okay, there's this information all the way over here, but I need it. This question comes up in my brain when I read this. I say, oh, well, what does that mean? And that information should be right there. And so these design principles really help inform the goals, like the choices that were made through the design process. And then I got to the information architecture, information architecture is kind of like how the content on a page is organized. So we kind of agreed on mixing, depending on content. So AI had more audience-based, like grouping versus the data privacy was more based on interest. And once I established that, I went and back to all my big resources and plugged them into this Airtable. Thanks, Anita. I know she's on the call right now. She showed me her framework and I kind of made my own way. And this acts as a centralized location for AI and data privacy information. So I took all the content that was kind of disparately spread, interconnected it, and organized it according to the information architecture that was set. And then the cool thing about this is that it also doubles as a collaborative content tool. So, as Malgosia, my manager, and Omar, who's the data privacy manager, were, collaborating on content, they could see what would be in the website without having to go directly into the Figma and edit content there. Then going into actually getting to the design, I started with a design system. So there wasn't an existing design system, and I knew I had to do this rebrand. So I started just getting the colors, ensuring that we were meeting compliance. Colors is really just one way that you can meet compliance to ensure accessibility, and everything else is also compliant throughout the website. But here's just a little example of like contrast checks and everything like that. And then moving into translating the CMS. So a CMS is like a kind of like a web builder where all the pages are held, and Long Beach doesn't have any specific like documentation or design system around outside of that CMS. And the CMS has a lot of specific design constraints. So, in the past, the workflow for designers was like the Smart Cities website was designed on Photoshop because there's no design system that a designer can use replicatable like blocks and go in and test things. And so this is actually me building the first Figma workflow for the city of Long Beach, which is taking legacy systems and blending it with current ones. So to do so, I inspected code just like on the inspector, and I replicated reusable blocks and templates in Figma and like just as components to stay within the design constraints. And then I also wanted to introduce new components. So there's two types. There's custom code, which is less sustainable because only the web team can edit it. So it means that like content editors can't go in and change things. And I had to limit the amount. So getting to one was a huge win. We just have one, and it's only used very sparingly to ensure maximum sustainability after my 10-week fellowship ends. And then building new components that were working within the CMS constraints was getting a little bit creative. And these are mainly used to like propose ways that information could be like processed and understood without it just being big walls of text. So getting into like initial wireframes, we have the data privacy. We are organizing mostly just in 3 subpages and highlighting the digital rights platform, which is a platform where residents and anybody can go and see the technologies and how their data are being used. And then here we have the AI ones, and this one has like linked both the staff resources and the strategy. So after we looked there, moving into validation, seeing how did these designs land, and with people, I interviewed 4 city staff doing both our augmented usability testing and preference testing. And I was really looking specifically for like going back to the initial like discovery phase of like content and design patterns and then design principles, seeing how those things held up, those frameworks of the design that I had built looked and were how people were kind of receiving it. And so in augmented usability testing, I asked people how to do specific tasks and to find information, and was in like watching as they interacted and experienced and seeing where they encountered friction. And then I also did preference testing to see how different design choices were more or less effective for information processing for people. And then I wanted to get into the refined stage, which is like taking all of that information, all the versions, and boiling it down. So something that was a really big framework throughout was this kind of big bubble of like how to make decisions. Decisions are really hard to make. There were like 8 official iterations throughout, and we kept coming back to this type of framework. Whereas like, okay, first of all, what's feasible? Like there's the technical capacity, and you can't go outside of that. It's the CMS, it's rigid. And then within that, you're kind of finding a balance between what is sustainable and possible so that people can continue to do things when I'm gone, what's internally aligned with stakeholders, and what is good for users versus also what is good from like a design perspective. Is this good design? Is this best practice? And finding that sweet spot was the ongoing challenge. But ultimately, it took me here. So here is just a really quick walkthrough on data privacy. Uh-oh. Going to the AI one as well. Sorry for the loading time. You can just take a quick look at it. It's very similar looking. Okay, I think it's buffering, so I'm gonna move on. But just a little overview. And then going forward, this is currently this is currently under development. So next I'm going to be doing some dev site revisions in my last week and making sure that the Figma designs are aligning with the output as this gets launched. And then also Malgosia and Omar will be going through and writing content. Right now, a lot of things are like placeholder content. I'm not a content designer, but I had to kind of do content strategy. But definitely some last polishes need to be made. And then additionally, going through and applying and doing a larger smart cities initiative redesign. So following the same design framework and doing those user research sessions with residents to see how it's landing and applying the new design system. So yeah. I wanted to say, so, oh yeah, my takeaways. One thing is navigating constraints. So pressure testing, where the constraints live, how can you work around it? The web like example was a great way of like getting new components that are way more visually pleasing than a big wall of text while still operating within things that are rigid. And then also like leaning on community. Thank you for everybody. I interviewed a bunch of people to find out, how they navigate similar things, and using those resources really helped me go through this process in 10 weeks. And then also like learning to communicate across disciplines. So understanding the priorities and language of internal stakeholders and making sure that we can collaborate in the ways that are effective and move toward the end goal. And I want to say a huge thank you to Malgosia, my manager, the TPP team as a whole, Coding It Forward, the fellow and the team, my mentor Jen, and the greater civic tech community, as well as my family, for all the support that they provided me through this process.
We have a question in the chat for you, Cassia. How did you decide which custom component to use from Calgary?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So I think the custom component, I can kind of go back to it, was I don't know, did I stop sharing my screen? No, I'm still here. We have the card, and we wanted to have like some way to link to subpages and to not have everything on one big page. And so like there wasn't a really great way to do that within the CMS, because these other pieces over here, these are lists. And so they're actually technically tables. So the way that they show up in code are as tables, and these little numbers are actually images and then the text. And so this is actually clickable in ways that can provide in-page navigation, which wouldn't be possible otherwise. So it felt like that was kind of the decision making around being able to have these subpages and have in-page navigation.